Everybody was kung fu fighting, and it was horrible, unethical, and goddamn violent. What's up, everybody? This is Vincent Tsung, the Wandering Warrior, and today I want to talk about a story, in fact, a context, the context behind what we could now call Kung Fu or civilian Wushu. See, despite Confucian ideals in Chinese society, the reality for most Chinese people was a lot more brutish and violent. Life was tough and violent to a degree already. In the Qing dynasty, most Han Chinese were farmers or engaged in hard labor. In agricultural life, the fact of killing animals for food already put people one step closer to being able to commit violence. Additionally, the ever present concern of not enough rain or too much causing flooding weighed on the minds of Chinese people. Competition over resources in bad times could get violent, and aside from fending off wild animals like wolves and tigers, there were bandits. Now, bandits often roamed the countryside in areas that was hard for the empire to police. So therefore, a lot of villages had to have militias, and a lot of caravans had to have escorts or guards. There was a thriving industry of martial artists training people in fighting skills and proving their worth in duels on Leitai or raised platforms for all to see. Martial artists also trained for or trained others for the imperial military exams. This could ensure career advancements for those looking to be officers in the Qing local armies. And of course, sometimes these very martial artists would become the bandits or the rebels if economic opportunities weren't that good. I mean, after all, violence was their specialty. And when there's conflict, there's room for heroes. The mindset of the ordinary people was further made martial by a whole pantheon of very martially skilled gods and powerful figures, as well as a whole storytelling genre of wuxia involving xiake or knight errants, a martial artist and adventurer living by his own moral code and his fighting skills. In parts of China, in fact, there were traveling and dueling swordsmen who could be called upon to exact vigilante justice or recruited to fight in local conflicts. But where there's heroes, there's also villains, perhaps scarier than bandits or ghosts or demons. The Gui, or ghosts, demons, they hunger for human flesh. Humans must use talismans, exorcism, and execution to destroy these supernatural predatory enemies. People accused of being demons could be tortured and executed as well. Now, how often was it that a psychopath or some kind of terrible criminal was legitimately executed? And how often was it that it was more scapegoating and torture and execution to assuage the fears and anxieties and prejudices of the people? We will never really know. Nevertheless, it was brutal. Although the Qing Empire was brought about by the bloody conquest of the decaying Ming Empire, after the conquest and the quelling of early rebellions, things got very good for Chinese people. In fact, the Qing Empire was initially a very successful state in having militarily supreme bannermen garrisoned across the empire and a state apparatus that incentivized Chinese and non Chinese administrators to work closely with the Isinjuro dynasty and its men. The Qing Empire was the fourth largest empire in human history and for a time one of the richest. The population boomed. The economy was good, and more people were able to move about and to flourish than before. That said, some of these factors ended up becoming problems, and the Qing dynasty leadership was also becoming more decadent and more corrupt. The population boom caused many social issues. With more people, there was less arable land to go around. Oldest sons often inherited land and property, and as such, many young men were not given great opportunities economically. Landless, their odds of marrying were reduced. Additionally, although nothing like the People's Republic of China's one child policy, Han Chinese society had long had a bias towards boys. See, the daughters were more expendable since they would be married off to other clans anyhow, and as such, the infanticide of daughters was not uncommon. Therefore, in certain times and places, there could be a sex ratio imbalance. Those with employment often found themselves squabbling with others over shared resources. Guilds and other organizations fought over resources like water, right of way in streets, and so on. Gangs of unemployed men brawled in cities and were drawn to the martial arts. With the sex imbalance, landlessness, a surplus of disenfranchised single young men without good employment, that's a recipe for unrest. This is not to say that Qing Dynasty China was a lawless land. Far from it. In fact, local elders and magistrates were often busy resolving civil disputes. The Qing Dynasty records indicate that there was a serious backlog of complaints and cases, and the officials were working as hard as they could to resolve these problems before they became more serious. That said, if things became too serious, they got violent, and when violence got out of control, it was met with extreme brutality. The Qing Empire once had a very effective military. Qing bannermen, Manchu, Mongol, and Han professional warriors and administrators were stationed across the empire in garrisons. Local forces, called the Green Standard Armies, would police the provinces and support the bannermen in crushing serious threats. If they could, they sought to pacify the region by killing the leaders of the revolt and granting amnesty for the surrendered forces. However, the other method was extermination. This involved killing the leaders, their forces, and all their families and affiliates. Yet, the longer the Manchu and their bannermen stayed in the garrisons across the empire, the more they sinicized and the more decadent they got. They became complacent and stopped maintaining the old ways of frugality, strength, and military excellence. And at the same time, many Green Standard Army commanders were highly corrupt, siphoning off funds for armies that were under strength and for arsenals that only existed on paper. So when serious unrest occurred, their inadequacy was exposed. Many Han Chinese also hated the Manchu and resented having been conquered. The Tiandi Hui, or Triads, was an insurgency which fomented rebellion against the Qing. In 1787, they started a massive rebellion in Taiwan, which was defeated but nearly bankrupted the empire. Then in 1854, they launched the Red Turban Rebellions, which destabilized southern China. Full of anti Manchu sentiment, the Taiping Rebellion of 1850 was one of the bloodiest in human history. The Taiping Rebellion was partly the creation of a new state, in part the unleashing of the rage of the Hakka, a marginalized and oppressed Chinese ethnicity, and partly a campaign of extermination against the Manchu. Now, the Qing dynasty did manage to decisively defeat the Taiping Rebellion, but not without extreme financial strain and the use of not only the Qing military, but also the Yongying armies, as well as foreign mercenaries. Um, about 20 to 30 million people died, and that is estimated to be about 5 to 10% of the entire uh, population of the empire. So, yeah, it was pretty bad. While this war was raging, the Punti Hakka clan wars kicked off in the Pearl River Delta, and that cost about 1 million lives and many more displaced, while the Cantonese and the Hakka were going at war with each other. See, many Chinese ethnicities had rivalries with one another, let alone their prejudices against non Han Chinese ethnicities. So, if things exploded, it could get really bad, and it did. The decay of the Qing Dynasty bannerman system and the Green Standard Army made them rely on local militias a lot more, and this kind of chipped away at their martial credibility and therefore also the authority of the empire. War, famine, and societal collapse. An increasingly corrupt government not only had to deal with all that, but also British and Americans smuggling in opium. The empire, falling behind technologically and losing to foreign powers, trade concessions to foreigners, and the opening up of China to missionaries. You can see you'd get a very angry and humiliated population. The Boxer Rebellion erupted in 1899, fueled by anti foreign and anti Christian anger, and armed with millenarianism, martial arts, and pre battle rituals. The Boxers, launched an uprising that ended up seeing about 100,000 dead. After several more massacres of Manchu and Mongols and other episodes of violence, the Qing dynasty would finally fall in 1912. And it was in this context that civilian Wushu, or what we now call Kung Fu, matured in. Everybody was Kung Fu fighting, and it was horrible, unethical, and goddamn violent. I hope you guys enjoyed that brief glimpse at the various types of violence and causes for it in the late Qing dynasty. This is what created what we now know as Kung Fu or Wushu, and it's a fascinating time period, and it also informs us perhaps what are the things that are missing today that could be bringing greater effectiveness to our arts. That's a conversation for another time. Either way, if you enjoyed it, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below with your thoughts, and thank you for following me on my journey. I salute yours. Peace.